Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, friends, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's great to see everybody in person. We do have other folks that are online, so we're still working out all our technical things, but thanks to all, we get that done. So I want to welcome. We're the Charlotte Wildlife Stewards, the Charlotte chapter of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, and everybody that's on our leadership team, stand up. I want y'all to see who our leaders are. So we all work together as a team, and it's great. And we're one of 19 chapters with the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. It's the only wildlife federation that has chapters throughout the state, and that makes it really cool for us to be able to get things done. And what I don't have on here is, because so we're on Facebook, Instagram. We have a newsletter. If you signed up back there, we'll make sure you're on the newsletter list so that you get that. They go out once a month. We also have a volunteer list. If you'd like to volunteer with us for some activities, we've done several recently that were really a lot of fun. So, go on. So our mission is to create, protect, preserve wildlife habitat through education, engagement, enjoyment. And of course, this is one of our education pieces, and I hope it's also an enjoyment one. What we do, we connect people with nature, and we do that with some of our programs. We have an I Spy nature walk. We do those once a season. We have one coming up in December. I'll tell you about a little while later. You can see some pictures here. We did Kids in Nature Day, all hands-on activity. In June, we do Wild on the Water. It's our fundraising event. It's really a lot of fun. We've paddled on Mountain Island Lake and have a naturalist that talks about the ospreys and the other wildlife up there. One thing I learned this past June is we had 2 bald eagle nests on Mountain Island Lake. So that was really exciting to know that. We've done some trash cleanups. Talk about that in a minute. And then we partner with other organizations like the Carolina Raptor Center, with the Native Plant Society, with Parks and Rec for some of our activities.
If you want to talk to them, just step back over here because they wanted to see you.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Our president,
All right.
Donna Bowles. She always feels to introduce herself, but Donna has been doing lots of hard work. She took over from Ernie, who was the founder of our organization, who is going to be leaving us soon. They're a big move, but Donna is our president, and she picked up right where he left off, and they're just rolling.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, what I want to tell you, October was really busy. So you can see this represents all the activities that we did. So with 3 trash cleanups, we picked up almost 1,000 pounds of trash just this month. The 3 little girls, they were at an elementary school. So we did you see the Butterfly Highway sign? They have a pollinator garden there that we are collaborating, helping them with that. Today, I delivered a bluebird house for them, so they'll be putting that up. Also, Connie donated a little concrete bird bath. They're going to be putting that there. So they'll have all the elements of a wildlife habitat. And anyway, those girls helped pick up trash that day. Then the one up here, some of our leadership team and co-workers and some other community volunteers, that was 800 pounds that we got out of that, about a half a mile of Irwin Creek, 7 tires, an oil drum, shopping cart. It's just 2 car bumpers. I mean, it's crazy what you can find in these. Up here, where you can't see behind, that's chapter leader and a staff member, Tara. We collaborated with the city of Charlotte in one of their pollinator gardens. There's an urban arboretum trail in Charlotte. I don't know if y'all have ever heard about that. This was sort of over on the west side. They already had a garden there, and we were planting more things to enhance that. So that was a fun collaboration with the city of Charlotte, and we'll be doing more of that. This cute group of guys down here was a fraternity at UNCC that reached out and wanted to have a service project. So they cleaned up they didn't get in the creek, but they cleaned up along Mallard Creek by campus and got 135 pounds. And the thing that's important about that is the North Carolina Wildlife Federation has a program called Go Clean and Go Green, something like that. And so for every 25 pounds of trash that gets picked up, reported to them through their website, that translates into a native tree, a native shrub, or 10 pollinator plants that get planted somewhere in North Carolina. So sometimes they're in a park, sometimes they're in a school, you know, or other public grounds, or, you know, working with the city, we work with them on that. And then this was Ranger Rick was our special guest for Kids in Nature Day. And so that was really a treat. Ranger Rick really charmed everybody, adults and kids alike. And that was a really fun day. And I hope that some of you might join us for that as volunteers, or if you've got young ones you can bring, kids, grandkids, that would be great. Let's see what we got next. So the other thing that we do as part of our mission is we promote wildlife habitat. And I'm probably preaching to the choir here. So you all know what they need, the same things that all the rest of us need: food, water, shelter, a place to raise their young, and sustainable practices, which of course means don't use pesticides, use your leaves as mulch, you know, keep the leaves on your property. They've got plenty of little critters that live in them, that overwinter in them and everything. So we really promote that. And we have, if you haven't certified your yard, or if you don't know about it, if you're interested in it, we do have some information back on our table about that. And you can take one of those with you. Ernie's, if you want, Ernie's got one, if you want to look. Sorry, guys. Yeah, especially if you live in Stonehaven. We're trying to get Stonehaven certified as a wildlife community. So we need some more properties to certify. And, you know, a lot of people already have everything, they just don't know it. So some upcoming events that we have. So December, well, let me tell you this. October about did us in. November's kind of a quiet month. We're recovering. We have, you know, this program. And then Alden's going to say a little bit about our live staking workshop that will be on December 4th.
Yes, and I know we all want to get to the main event and listen to the Raptor Center and Maggie. So I'll just go over this very briefly. One of our upcoming work days is a live staking workshop with Charlotte Mecklenburg Stormwater. We're going to be doing stem cuttings, basically cuttings of willows or other wetland trees, and just plugging them into the watershed and the wetland buffer area at Chantilly, just to help continue to restore that natural habitat. So there's 15 spots for that, and that'll be a fun, educational, hands-on workshop. You'll learn a lot. And then I'm also going to plug the I Spy coming up at Dilworth. Isn't that at Latta Park?
Yes, that's going to be at Latta Park in Dilworth.
And that's fun, family-friendly, educational, really fun. Just get out, look at nature, explore, see what you can see with some guides.
We're going to do something just a little different at that one too. We don't usually, you know, do a workshop or anything. It's more just a nature walk, but we are going to make some of the bird treats out of pine cones and bird seed. So that'll be kind of fun.
Yep. So hands-on activity with that one as well. And then I'm really excited about our public program in January. We're going to receive this awesome presentation from Ben Goldfarb. He's the author of a fantastic book called Eager, The Secret Life of Beavers and Why They Matter. So his whole book, written beautifully, touches on the evolution of beavers, their natural history from their biology, their behavior, their management or lack of management, and everything that they can do to help us become a more resilient planet to climate change. And that'll be completely virtual. He lives in Colorado. So if you have time, Beavers and Why They Matter, grab his book, Ben Goldfarb, and it's a quick, easy read. You'll fly through it. I mean, the guy's amazing. He turned me into a beaver believer. I really realized how ignorant I was about what shaped the North American continent, which was the American beaver. So that's going to be awesome. That'll be January 10th. Read the book and then join us online for that one.
Right. Yeah, that one will be online only. And then the last thing I'll just mention is we're going to have a workshop to build some bluebird houses, and we're still working on the details of that. We just have the date right now, but there will be more information about that coming out in the newsletters and whatever. And then I've got, before we get to Maggie, which I know we're all dying to get there, I want to recognize Ernie McLaney. Or you can stand back there. So Ernie has been a great inspiration to me. So I just want to tell you a couple things about him. Well, Ernie and his wife Debbie are going to be moving down near the coast at the end of the month. And this is just like a lifelong dream of theirs. So I'm really happy about that. But I'm not happy that he's leaving. I'm happy that he's going to where he wants to be. So, but Ernie, he's done so much for not just the Charlotte Wildlife Stewards, but for the Charlotte community as a whole. He is a certified wildlife habitat steward, which is a program through the National Wildlife Federation. He was a former leader in the Hawk chapter, which was the first chapter in North Carolina. And I guess, were we the second? Was Crown the second?
Third.
The Crown, so then Ernie started the Charlotte chapter, which at the time was called Crown. That was in 2013. And in 2015, he led, well, it was probably before then, but in 2015, the effort that he had led to Charlotte being certified as a wildlife community. So the city of Charlotte is a certified wildlife community with the National Wildlife Federation. And every year and you have to do things every year. It's not just a one-time thing. So every year you have to add habitats, you have to have educational programs, you have to have other types of outreach. So Ernie has been a great leader in making sure that all of those things happen. He's been a great teacher. I have learned a lot from Ernie. He's been a really good mentor. I couldn't have done this past year without him. So I hope I can do the next year, but I also have his phone number and his email. So anyway, but Ernie's done a lot. He was president for the first 5 years of this chapter, current vice president. I've already mentioned all this. And then Charlotte won chapter of the year for 2019. And then 2021, Ernie was awarded volunteer of the year at the North Carolina Governor's Conservation Awards banquet, which was very well deserved. So I want to thank Ernie for everything that he's done. I know I've left things out. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you very much.
So keep something off the floor. Stay tuned with this chapter. There's a lot of great things happening, including a 10-year anniversary celebration next year. So stay tuned and thanks for all your support through the years.
And Ernie's promised to come back for that. Okay, so let me check one thing. Okay, so now we get to what y'all came to hear. So Maggie Stein is with us tonight. She's going to talk about Hawk, and I will just kind of give you a little intro to her, which I have to read because there's a lot here. So Maggie, she's a volunteer manager at the Carolina Raptor Center, which I think a lot of you are familiar with. Oh, let me stay right here.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Sorry. She graduated from Texas State University with the Bachelor's of Science degree in geography, emphasizing resource and environmental management. In 2017, she worked as the environmental educator in the Outer Banks, and it was in this position that she trained with raptors for the first time and fell in love with the birds of prey. How could you not, right? She recently moved back to North Carolina from Albuquerque, New Mexico, so she's having to make that transition. She was a project leader and field technician for raptor monitoring studies, as well as an education and outreach coordinator for Avian Conservation Group. She's an avid bird enthusiast and is excited to share her love with raptors with us. So thank you very much, Maggie. Okay. And we will take
so much.
we will take questions at the end.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. And I have loved hearing a little bit about the work that you guys are doing, the incredible work that you guys are doing. And it's really inspiring to know, like, we're very fortunate to partner with such great individuals and such a good organization. So. Okay, I'll try to, I like to walk around a little bit, so.
I know some of the folks want to see faces.
Great. Okay, here we go.
Go to. Here, I'll do
Great.
here more. Or.
Down there.
I think if you go to slideshow, it should let you show the presentation.
Oh, that, oh, yeah. Yeah, you're unsure.
Mhm. Awesome. Is this coming through for everybody online? Looks great to us.
Still loading.
Okay,
We're seeing all your slides.
don't look.
Gary says yes.
Um, great. So thank you so much for the warm introduction. I'm really excited to nerd out about some birds with y'all. Let me know if we need to change anything online as we're going along. But yeah, we'll go ahead and jump right in. So I'm an agenda kind of person. So here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to just talk about some of the basics of what is a raptor. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Carolina Raptor Center in general. I wouldn't be a very good volunteer manager if I didn't pitch getting into volunteering with Carolina Raptor Center. So we're going to talk about ways that y'all can get involved with CRC. And then let's talk hawks. We're going to talk all about the most common species that you'll see around in your neighborhoods in North Carolina. And then we'll chit chat about some of the threats to not only hawks, but just wild birds in general, and then what you can do to help. And we'll have a Q&A. So it's 7:18. So I'm going to try to go pretty quick as we go along.
Maggie,
So-
I hate to interrupt, but could you put the slideshow on presentation mode? Maybe it might just be me that's seeing this.
You're seeing
Oh,
I'm just
Okay,
seeing
they're
all your
seeing the-
slides there.
okay,
all of my stuff. Don't look at my notes.
yeah.
Be awesome. No one's laughing at my raptor. I
Ah,
think it's pretty good. Oh,
yeah. you said
they're
you
in
don't
presentation
like
mode.
that. Okay,
So maybe stop share and then like
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, y'all.
So for her, so, and then we had, so now try again.
Boom.
You have two up. Is
Yeah,
that
it was
one?
super clear for Donna. There we go.
That's fine.
Yeah, I can see the T-Rex now. Perfect.
Okay.
All
Do you
right.
see any notes?
No, I do not. I just
Great.
see who me. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Thank
So now you can laugh at my joke. Great. Is that just gonna live up there or? All right.
I figured out while you're talking.
Okay, so what is a raptor? Here we go. Let's chit chat about a raptor. So I like to tell kids that we rescue modern day raptors, right? So the raptors that we work with are descendants from maybe dinosaurs, but definitely vertebrate eating animals, right? So I'm gonna
Might live up there.
so here we have some examples of our raptors. So all raptors are carnivorous birds. So if we were to feed them grapes or birdseed, they would get sick. Recently, very smart people from the Peregrine Fund and other organizations have reclassified what makes a raptor. So before it was a lot of qualitative characteristics, but now it is more based off of genetics. So we've got birds that are, there's a clearer definition now because now all raptors, our modern day raptors, are sharing a common ancestry that eat mainly vertebrates. So this guy is a Seriama, very different from the raptors that we think of, but he is now considered a raptor. And that definition change really helps us reach more species to prioritize conservation. There's a lot of different species that if they are under this big umbrella of raptor, we can do more for them as a species and with our protection for them. So I really like that diagram from the Peregrine Fund over there. We've got all the birds and then we've got who goes into raptors now. So that is including our cute little carrot-legged red Seriama. So these are the qualitative characteristics that we use to base raptors on: talons, binocular vision, they're carnivores, and they've got those hooked beaks. And I just think this is a gorgeous photo of a raptor, you know, demonstrating all of those things, why they have those amazing characteristics. So we're just going to briefly touch on all the types of raptors that you think of. We got our eagles. If I right click. Nope. Nope. Sorry, guys. No, I totally appreciate it. Yep. All right, we'll just keep on going. Hopefully I didn't write anything up there, but so we've got our eagles. This is the one that people always think of for raptors. That is the 2 bald eagles right there. We've got a juvenile bald eagle on the right, and then a full grown, or yeah, on the left, and then a full grown normal bald eagle on the right. We got our owls. Very, very interesting, misunderstood raptor in my opinion. They're those silent hunters out there at night. And they are a little special because their evolution is a little different. There are a lot of different traits about them that are very unique. So then we've got our falcons, our sweet little falcons, and then we've got our vultures. So those are all of our other ones besides hawks that we really think of. So with this new definition, we've got a lot more vulture species that are under raptors now as well. So, and I do love vultures, they're my favorite. It's really great to hear that Audrey did a vulture talk here because they're just the best. So the Carolina Raptor Center, we're going to briefly touch on that, was founded in 1975 in the UNCC basement. And the first patient they ever had was a broad-winged hawk, which I think is really cool because it's not a very common hawk that you see around here. And it just grew from there. And eventually they got tired of us bringing rehab birds into the hospital downstairs and kicked us out to find a new facility. So since that time, we've seen a lot of really great successes. We just celebrated our 25,000th patient that came into the Carolina Raptor Center. So that is a lot of birds every single year that are rehabilitated and cared for. And yeah, so those are a lot of the really cool successes that we've had. And this is just our mission statement. So the Carolina Raptor Center ignites imaginations and inspires engagement in the natural world through the exploration and rehabilitation of birds of prey. So those 2 main points at the end is really how we get our work done, is the exploration of birds of prey, and with that rehabilitation of birds of prey. So we're going to touch real briefly on those. This is our exploration of birds of prey. Raise your hand if you've been out to the Raptor Trail. Yay, everybody, a lot of people. If you haven't, check it out. It's really fun. You can make a really good day of it because we're on the Latta Nature Preserve, gorgeous area that you can go hike afterwards and sit out on the lake. It's a really, really nice way to spend the day. So it's a 3/4 mile walking trail that houses and displays more than 30 birds of prey. My personal favorites are king vulture. She's awesome. And these birds are from not only North Carolina, but from all around the world. And so it is a zoological facility when you go and visit. So that is how we really mainly focus on our exploration of birds of prey. We also have formal and informal education programs that we do on and off campus. And this picture right here gets me very excited today because before this, we had a volunteer event and we repainted all of that. So you should come check it out. It looks really good. Thanks to the volunteers that were out there today. And then the other side of our mission statement is that medical facility. Were there that many chats before? Is everybody doing good? I hope they're fine. You're monitoring? You can be
Oh yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay, great. Okay.
I'll let you know.
Woo, okay. Our medical facility evaluates and treats between 800 to 1,000 raptors every single year. We're not out there looking around for injured raptors though. People call them in. And so with that, they are cared for with our veterinarians and hospital staff. And not only are they caring for those rehab birds, they're also caring for the resident birds that live there full time. So they've got a lot of work to do. You can see this image here is one of our veterinarians and a tech doing a medical procedure on a bald eagle. So it's a functioning hospital, it's a teaching hospital, and a lot of folks come out to learn from us. All of our medical records and patient files are kept under RaptorMed, which is a custom-made filing system for our hospital. So that is how we keep track of what injured birds are doing and all that. So real quick, we're gonna do some common questions. Where do the birds on the trail come from? So like I said, we've got species from North Carolina, but also from all over the world. And this is a new change for the Carolina Raptor Center. Conserving raptors is a worldwide problem. So if we have really dynamic species that people can really engage with, such as our gray-crowned cranes, I mean, look at that bird. That is a really great way that we can inspire folks to want to conserve these birds. So all birds like this, because these guys are not native to the US, are hatched in other zoological facilities and transferred to us. So we would never go to a habitat that they were in and catch a bird and bring it back, or take birds from their country or whatever. So they're hatched in zoological facilities in the United States. Can I visit an injured bird? This is a question that we get a lot, because people, when they bring in a bird, feel very, very attached to them. And I totally understand that. As someone who's done rehab before, you get very, very attached, and folks want to come and visit the bird that they brought in. It is a hospital, right? So we want to keep it as calm and safe feeling for those birds as possible, because they are not domesticated animals. One analogy that I've been told that really puts it in perspective to me is if an injured bird comes in and they're injured, and then a Godzilla comes and grabs you and then puts you in a little spot. So it's a scary thing for them, right? And so we want to make sure that they are feeling as less stressed as possible. Do the birds ever fly around outside? So when you come to the Raptor Center, they are in enclosures. A wild bird is usually spending about 80% of their time perched. So some people like to think of birds just flying around and soaring and, thinking about really intense thoughts, or I don't know, like reflecting on their lives. But, they're flying for purpose, right? They're flying to find food. They're flying to find a mate. They're flying to migrate. So like I said, especially raptors, they spend about 80% of their time perched. So that kind of leads into that question. What is the trash in their enclosures? So our birds also really enjoy enrichment. So that is to not only keep them engaged, but also to help facilitate natural behaviors. So a lot of our birds are foragers in the wild. So we'll set up foraging enrichment, and it's meant for them to rip up. So we're not going to put really nice things in there. We're going to put cereal boxes and tissue paper and stuff like that for them to rip up. So some people get really confused of like, why is there a toothpaste box in there? It's for the birds. So when do I get to snuggle with a hawk? People really, really want to pet birds, which I understand. As a bird lover, I would love to pet some birds too. But these are wild animals, even the ones under our care. And we want to make sure that we are respecting them. And petting a bird is for us, not for them. And so we always put their well-being first. And that's one of the best things about Carolina Raptor Center, is the bird's well-being is always the first priority. So the answer is never to get to snuggle with a hawk, unfortunately. And what do you feed them? Well, we feed them what they would be eating in the wild. So they are carnivorous birds. Unfortunately, they're not eating hamburgers and hot dogs. They're eating mice and rats and quail and mealworms and chicks, and all stuff like that. So that's just a little brief overview about some of the common questions that we get about CRC. And then, like I said, I wouldn't be a good volunteer manager if I didn't pitch the Carolina Raptor Center and how you can get involved. There are tons of different ways that you can volunteer. Mark here is one of our best raptor rescuers. He goes out and rescues birds all the time for us. You had a chimney rescue a couple weeks ago. Nice, very cool. So that's a really good way. I like to, promote that for folks who are looking to get involved in a way, because it is less of a time commitment if you want it to be. Of course, you can be very dedicated and go out as much as you want. But when we get rescue calls, what we do is send volunteers out to catch that bird and bring it back to the hospital. So there's different levels leading up to that. We would never send you out to a warehouse to catch a bird if you've never done that before. So that's a really good way to get involved. We have our hospital volunteers who come in for their hospital shift once a week and work with intake exams, prepping diets, cleaning enclosures, stuff like that. We have our docents and junior docents. So those are folks interacting with the public and telling them about the birds that are along the public trail. And it is also open to younger children. I think it's over 12 that we offer junior docent programs, but we have some really awesome junior docents, and seeing a kid just so excited about these birds is very, very, I think, very powerful and very exciting. We also have our SOAR program. Those are tailored to high school students. And so those are primarily in the summer, and they help with a lot of our summer camps. So Raptors Rock is our really big summer camp, and it's pretty popular. We have our property volunteers. We're really looking for folks for that right now. So any gardeners who really want to make our campus as beautiful as possible, that would be working with Ernie from the Raptor Center, who is our property manager. Then we also have our aviary caretakers. They clean enclosures and create enrichment for the birds. Our resident bird care volunteers do about the same. And then we also have our internships if you're looking to do an internship. Whew. All right, so let's talk hawks. Here we go. Oh wait, buzzards. So let's talk about that. So hawks are a unique thing to the United States. In most areas of the world, other people call hawks buzzards. So the auger buzzard is a very, very, very close relative to the red-tailed hawk. I grew up calling vultures buzzards. Every time I'd see a vulture, I thought it was a buzzard. But you know, in all other parts of the world, most of the time those hawks are called buzzard. The hawk word is not in their vocabulary, which I thought was very interesting. Because really, truly, the auger buzzard looks just like a red-tailed hawk, except they are native to Africa. So we're talking hawks or buzzards today. And we're going to just really go into the ones that you'll see very commonly into your neighborhoods. So looking at these guys, I want to hear from y'all. What kind of hawks are these? Let's start with this guy right here. Cooper's hawk. Yeah, great. Okay, so this right here is a Cooper's hawk. Cooper's hawk. This right here is our red-tailed hawk. Very pretty picture of our red-tailed hawk. And then right over there, we've got our red-shouldered hawk. So there are 15 species that can be found in the US for just hawks. Here in North Carolina, we have about 6 if you're counting migratory ones. But we're going to go really into the different characteristics of our hawks today, because these guys, even though they kind of look all very alike, there's a lot of things that are different about them. So first, we're going to really talk about our accipiter hawks. So this is an accipiter hawk. They are very, very streamlined. They look like a little torpedo. They're kind of more falcony shaped, I would say. They've got long pointy wings, and they've got that really streamlined and long tail. This is our Cooper's hawk. This is going to be the most common accipiter hawk that you're going to see around here. They also have their very close relative, the sharp-shinned hawk, which in my opinion looks just like a Cooper's hawk, only little bitty. So very, very similar body shapes and similar flight patterns. So a really good way to ID a Cooper's hawk if you're out in your yard is that super long tail. And they also have a very distinct way of flying. So they have a flap, flap, flap glide, like they'll flap, 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 glide, flap, 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 glide. It's because they're really designed to maneuver between old growth forests. So they've got those long pointy wings to be able to be really aerodynamic and be able to maneuver super well. Because Cooper's hawks have a favorite type of food. Anyone want to guess? Songbirds, right? So they're out there. Your bird feeder is not only feeding those cute little Tweety birds, they're also feeding the Cooper's hawks, which they really appreciate. Cooper's hawks are very well adapted to be around people just because that flight pattern gives them the ability to fly between houses really well and buildings really well. So they have been a very good generalist species around here because development doesn't really bother them if they have, you know, that. And so they also build stick nests, which is good because if, you know, the trees are gone, they can find somewhere else to build a stick nest. So they'll readily use the sites of buildings to build stick nests. And, you know, there's a lot more spots to build stick nests than there are cavities a lot of the time in neighborhoods. So if you're worried about the birds at your bird feeder and you don't want the Cooper's hawks to go to town at your bird feeder, I would just take your bird feeder down for a couple days, let the Cooper's hawk realize, okay, this isn't an all-you-can-eat buffet here, move on to the next yard, and then put your bird feeder back up. So Cooper's hawks, coming from a rehab point of view, Cooper's hawks are super squirrely, fiery birds. They are tough to work with, I'll say. Yes, so those are Cooper's hawks. They are pretty territorial with their nest as well. So where I worked in Albuquerque, we would get a lot of reports of Cooper's hawks dive bombing folks at nesting season. It is illegal to move a Cooper's hawk nest or any raptor nest while they're actively nesting. So my suggestion would be just carry an umbrella and, you know, protect yourself that way and just keep on going. So I know we would get a lot of calls about that. If there's a Cooper's hawk outside my front door, what do I do? And I would carry an umbrella. Yeah, use a different door. And if you have any questions about like how to move forward with that, our hospital also answers questions about bird interactions and kind of asks as a mediator for stuff like that. So if you're concerned about that, you can definitely reach out about that. One other thing about our Cooper's hawks is the males are way smaller than the females. That's with a lot of raptor species, especially hawk species, but I think it's really noticeable in Cooper's hawks. The females are a lot beefier than the males, and there's a lot of theories of why that is for bird species. But part of that theories are that it does take a lot of energy to lay an egg. And so having a bigger body might make that easier. Or it could be that they always want to outcompete the males. So if they're a bigger bird who is trying to feed babies, maybe they're a bigger bird and can always get the best food. So those are our Cooper's hawks. Then we've got our red-shouldered hawk. So these are a buteo hawk. So I'm going to go back and forth just a little bit between these slides. So you see that really streamlined torpedo shape. And then we go, he's a football shape, like nice little football shape. Buteo hawks are more designed for soaring. But interestingly, the red-shouldered hawk is a very small buteo hawk. And we've got some artifacts to show y'all as we finish up at the end, but I'll just show you right here. So we've got, this is our Cooper's hawk foot. And then we've got a red-shouldered hawk foot. So you can see the Cooper's hawk foot is very long and streamlined, whereas the red-shouldered hawk is a little more beefy. But then this is a red-tailed hawk foot, which is also a buteo hawk foot. So pretty small for a buteo hawk, but yeah. We good? Oh, I don't know. It's a good try. So these guys like to hang around tall woods and water. They've got that really distinct barring on their belly and that reddish peachy underparts. I tell kids that hawks come in 3 different flavors: vanilla, strawberry, or chocolate. That's the same for our red-shouldered hawks as well. So you can have light morph hawks or darker morphed hawks. This guy's probably somewhere in the middle, but that's a good way to tell, you know, even within species, there is variation. So you'll see a darker red-shouldered hawk versus a lighter one within those species. But you can see that they also have this really short kind of stubbier tail when they're in flight. That's to help them kind of soar a little better. So they also are a stick nest bird. So they build those stick nests and they can return back to that stick nest if they would like, unless a great horned owl has taken up their residence, and then they don't argue with them. They have to go build another one. And these guys are really interesting. They have a mating display called a sky dance. So you'll see two red-shouldered hawks up there, kind of, it looks like they're fighting a little bit together, and that is a good sign that spring is on the way. And their biggest threat as a species is the clearing of their wooded habitats. So these guys really do rely on big old growth trees. And so that is their biggest threat. They are very common to see in suburban areas though. And I don't think they're a species of a lot of conservation concern. They're quite common around here. So that is our red-shouldered hawk. Yes.
Would you say that they're probably the most vocal of all of our local
Go ahead, repeat the question so the online people can hear.
He asked if they are the most vocal of all of the hawks around here. In my experience, they're very vocal, but excuse me, Cooper's hawks are too. So in New Mexico, there are no native red-shouldered hawks. So I'm just kind of getting used to having those guys around. In New Mexico, the Cooper's hawks were so loud, and I just don't hear them as often here. I definitely hear this guy though. So I don't really know if that's a regional thing. Maybe our coops are just a little quieter around here. But yeah, I hear these guys all the time. We actually have to be really careful at the Raptor Center when we have birds out, because old Rusty, like we call him, likes to come down and make their presence known, especially if we have one of our owls out, because that would be a threat to them, right? And so the wild red-shouldered hawks in the area come and investigate when we're having presentations out, which does not work very well. So we have to like make a bunch of noise and try to scare them off. And yeah, our community outreach coordinator calls them Rusties. So that's really stuck with me. So all the Rusties, and they make noise constantly. So at least they do out there. So great question. And then we have our great. Oops. All right, then we got our red-tailed hawk. So these guys are also Boodio hawk. They are a lot bigger than those red-shouldered hawks like we talked about. And they do not always have a red tail, unfortunately. So one of the best ways you can ID a red-tailed hawk is they've got this really distinct belly band. Still considering that that could be a light morph or a dark morph hawk. That belly band can be either really noticeable on a light morph hawk or a little harder to tell. Of course, with juvenile birds too, they all look super different. And it's really just about kind of their size and their shape, because their plumage is all over the place. They're not really figured it out yet. But in this photo, you can see that really distinctive belly band. It looks like they've got a big belt on. And then this guy is kind of cool because you can see how he's getting his red tail in, but hasn't quite gotten there all the way. So when they're juveniles, they've got that striping all down their tail, and eventually they get that red-tailed tail. Or there's also different sub variations within the red-tailed hawk. So like the Harlan's red-tailed hawk, they don't have a red tail at all. But yeah, so they don't always have a red tail, but a lot of times they will. Especially in this region, I've noticed that they have a lot of fully red tails. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. So she asked if we could compare their size in weight. So our red-tailed hawk, the biggest of the females, I would say top out about 4 pounds. Whereas our red-shouldered hawk, I would say 2 to 3 pounds for a female. Cooper's hawks are about 2 pounds at most. Those are the big females. But all these birds, is to say, none of them are going to weigh more than 6 pounds. So they're big birds flying around, but they're very lightweight to be able to fly and to be able to do what they need to survive. I hope that answers your question. So to ID them, just look for that belly band. They've also got these dark leading edges on their wings. With that, it's not all the way down the wing like the red-shouldered hawk. They've got kind of more just like up there. If that makes sense. These guys are the most common hawk in North America. So you'll see them all throughout North America, in all regions all year long. And these guys really like to hunt in big open areas. So the most times I see red tails is when I'm driving. So they'll be up on a power line, they'll be up on a fence post, they'll be sitting and looking, because that's really their best way of hunting, is just sitting and looking down and waiting. And so, like I said, you'll see them mostly on telephone poles or like pylons, stuff like that. And so this guy mostly eats mammals, whereas the other two had more bird-focused diets. This guy eats mostly mice, rats, squirrels, stuff like that. And their habitat is that open pastures, parks, grasslands, stuff like that. So red-tailed hawk. And then we also have our ospreys. These guys are considered a hawk, which are so cool, so unique looking. And these are primarily fish-eating birds. So they nest in trees or readily use man-made structures around water. There are a couple ospreys that I saw at Mountain Island Lake in Lotta Nature Preserve last time I was out on the lake. So they are there using that lake as their food source. And they have very, very barbed feet, almost sandpaper feeling feet to help grip those fish while they're hunting. And they are super accurate with their hunting. A study showed that a group of ospreys were successful 1 in every 4 dives that they would make to catch their fish. So that is hugely accurate. I just can't imagine if every time I went fishing, I caught something every 4 throws. That'd be amazing. So they're very, very accurate with their hunting. And their name osprey actually means bone breaker in Latin, which I think is very interesting. So they're a very intense bird, very good at fishing. And they also have a turnable outside toe. So that way they can hold that fish in any way that they need to. So this toe right here can either go in the front or go in the back if they need to really grab that fish in any way possible. And you can see they've got this really curved talon here, whereas our vulture foot that I'll bring out later has very flat feet. So this guy's not walking around on the ground very much at all. That'd be very uncomfortable. So they're spending most of their time either perched or diving into the water to get those fish. So those are the most common hawks that you're going to see around here. You can get more in depth and talk about like the sharpshins. We do get Swainson's hawks that migrate through here in parts of the state. That's going to be a very rare bird that you're going to see here. And yeah, those are the most common that you'll see around here. So let's talk about some threats to our wild birds. And that makes the organizations like you guys so important, is to prevent some of these threats. So habitat loss, what can we do? We can make our yards bird friendly. Domestic cats, I could get on a soapbox about this all day. Domestic cats kill billions of birds every single year. If you have a cat, please keep it indoors. I'm sure all of y'all know this, I'm preaching to the choir, but if you have a cat that's gonna drive you crazy that you cannot keep indoors, put a bell on the cat. That would be really good. And it does keep our cats safer if you're keeping them indoors, and they live a longer life too. So if you have a cat, keep it indoors. The number one reason that we see birds in the hospital are vehicle collisions. So that's our number one injury to our raptors. You know, it's never on purpose. No one's turning into a raptor. It's just the world we've created for these birds. But we can do things to prevent vehicle collisions, like not littering. So I grew up, you know, if you're eating an orange in the car, you just throw the orange peels out the car. They're gonna biodegrade, it'll be fine, right? Unfortunately, those types of biodegradable substances do attract rodents to the roadway. If you send a lot of rodents to the roadways, you're going to send a lot of raptors to the roadways, and that's how those vehicle collisions happen. So I would keep everything that you're eating in your car. I'm sure everyone knows that here. Illegal shootings. This is just really reaching out to people and making sure that they know how important these species are, and changing the stigma and making sure that folks know that, you know, it's illegal to shoot at these birds. We had a vulture come in with 7 pellets in the other day, and I just, why? Like, what is a vulture doing to you? It's never gonna hurt you, never gonna eat your chicken. So changing the stigma is super important, and that's why we do outreaches like this and at other places as well. Poisonings, mindful pest control. Donna talked about that a little bit earlier. Just making sure that you're using mindful pest control. No one wants mice in their house, but there's ways to go about it that are safe for not only our raptors, but for other wildlife as well. And then windows collisions is a big problem for our birds. And there's a lot of different ways you can safeguard your windows to prevent that. You know, if you have a window that birds aren't running into, I wouldn't worry about safeguarding your windows. It's just when you start to see a problem that you should really act on it. And yeah, got a couple more things. We can do some bird-friendly yards. This is a great example of all of those things they do need, like that water, their food, some cover, some nesting sites. And that's a really cute little picture of some barred owls taking a bath, which I really like. So we can make our yards more bird-friendly. Just keep the stuff in the car, because those little mice, they like to go over there. We can change the stigma. I've got a giant kestrel chasing a child. Like I said, hawks, they can only weigh about 4 pounds in this area, and they can't carry more than their body weight a couple feet. So even though you see a big, big bird, they're really not going to take your baby or take your wiener dog. I mean, unfortunately, though, when they're young, they're having to learn what they can and cannot hunt. So I'm not saying a bird might not try to take your wiener dog, but they're not going to take it very far. So, and a good way to prevent that too is just stand close to your dog, and they're not going to dive bomb you if you're around. And there are humane ways to scare away birds from your chickens, and just making sure your chickens have protective shelters to go under if there is a coop that is eyeing your chicken coop very, very heavily. Mindful pest control, just making sure that you are not using glue traps. They're so sad. Don't use glue traps. We got a screech owl in at my old job who was on a glue trap, and it was just terrible. We're a little dark-minded. We called him Elmer, which is not really good, but Elmer made a full recovery and was released. So yeah, and just making sure that we're using mindful pest control. And yeah, here's some recommended resources. I use this constantly. I mean, I look like a crazy person going on my walks and holding my Merlin app and trying to see if it'll ID birds. It's really cool if you haven't used it, and it's free. And it's got regional applications that you can put on there to make it really tailored for what you need. iBird Pro is really good. I think you buy it for $8, but it's got all the species in North America and like really good photos and really good genealogy stuff about those species. And I use it constantly just to like, oh, fun fact, did you know? Like it's a good one. And making sure you're using credible sources when you're learning stuff. Wikipedia is never a good source for bird stuff. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. We've got a bunch of artifacts up here that we can show you guys.
I don't know if there's any way to show those to the online folks.
I don't think there is.
Yeah, I know it's hate to have to miss that, but I understand.
Okay, great. All right, I'll look at the chat, make sure no one asks questions. Okay.
I do have a quick question, Maggie.
Yes.
Is there a particular raptor species that is the most difficult to rehabilitate?
Oh, that was a good question.
Everybody hear the question?
The question was that there's a particular species that's the most difficult to rehabilitate. I guess it really just depends on the injuries. You know, you can see a bird with really severe injuries in any species. I will say Cooper's hawks are just tough because they bash themselves up a lot. Like they don't want to be in captivity, even in a 100-foot flight cage, they're going to still be bashing into stuff, which is, you know, good for their survival in the wild. But if you have a broken wing and you're trying to recover, that's not a good way to spend your day. So in my experience, Cooper's hawks are just really tough to deal with. I'm the most scared of Cooper's hawks out of all birds. So yeah, question.
Can you go over one more time about how people might contact someone to volunteer over there?
Absolutely. So I've got my business cards up here. I'm the volunteer manager, so we're planning a new training. And we're kind of redoing the way that we're onboarding volunteers. So what we're going to do is have folks shadow in the volunteer spaces and see what really interests them. Because what happens is sometimes we get folks who really think they want to be in the hospital, but then they go to cut up a mouse for their first time and they're like, ooh, not for me. So we want to make sure that folks are getting all the different ranges of volunteer experiences and making sure they know all their options. So that's our new kind of process that we're exploring, is having folks shadow before they're onboarded as a volunteers.
Your last slide with your.
Yes. Oh gosh. Okay. Why is this so hard? Great. Is this working? Okay.
I can see it. Yep.
Great. Awesome. Question? Sure. So it really has to depend on their evolution. So they developed talons, they developed binocular vision, they developed all these very similar characteristics in a convergent way to raptors. So, well, not raptors, but like other species of raptors. So they have very similar characteristics, but they got there in a different way, evolutionary wise. They're also just birds that behave a lot differently than hawks or falcons. They tend to internalize a lot more of like injuries or stress. They're not going to outwardly show things like that. Whereas like a hawk, if they're feeling stressed out, they'll fly away or they'll puff up, or there's a lot of body language that they'll do to show they're stressed out. Whereas an owl might look chill, like, you know, if you don't know bird language very well, they might seem okay, but they tend to internalize a lot of stressors. So that can be not only for training, but for rehabilitation. We really got to keep an eye on those birds and making sure that they're not getting too stressed out, because there's been a lot of studies recently about using owls as avian ambassadors or representatives of their species, that a lot of course, it's different for all individuals, but what they're seeing is the trend seems to be that owls do a lot better in captivity if they were born under human care. Whereas a wild-caught owl, an adult wild-caught owl, is going to really kind of struggle with internalizing stress, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Once they're a wild, free flying bird, that's where they want to be. Whereas hawks and falcons are a lot more trainable, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Are there any hawks or owls that are endangered in North Carolina or decreasing to the point that that's?
Yes, so he asked, are there any hawks or owls that are decreasing? Unfortunately, what we're seeing is most birds are decreasing. There are some that are doing really well, like our barred owls are doing super well. Our red-tailed hawks are doing super well. But with that, we get a lot of those species out competing more species of concern. I'm very new to North Carolina. But for instance, in New Mexico, we had our spotted owls were getting out competed by great horned owls. And so there were just less and less of them because they shared the same resource. As far as birds under concern in North Carolina, from what I've heard, I need to fact check myself, but I think the kestrel is a species of concern. The American kestrel just because they are cavity nesters, and they do rely on old growth trees and snags to have that cavity, but they will readily use nest boxes. I don't think those are very commonly seen in neighborhoods here because they do require a lot of open space for hunting. But that's something I will need to look into. So I'm sorry that.
Now, you know, it used to be private beaches, it was really a whole farm, you know, but those are going away and kind of development. I mean, I think
That makes sense. And there are species of concern in states like Ohio as well. The barn owl. Yeah, just because there's not as many structures like you said. So I definitely would believe that they would be on the decline.
Barn owls nest in, will they only nest in old buildings or will they nest in tree cavities also?
They'll nest in tree cavities. I've mostly only really seen them in barns. No, I don't think they would use a nest box.
Yeah, it's urbanization with the barn owls. They like those big, expansive tracts of land. And so all the urbanization and habitat loss, they're not as good of a generalist as some of, our other species.
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you.
their feet to hold their prey.
Yeah, so the word raptor comes from hunting with their feet. So if you think of a velociraptor, they had stupid little legs or stupid little arms and big talons, which is how they got their feet or their food. Oh my gosh, sorry, y'all. I got my COVID booster and I think I'm like losing my brain. But yeah, they would hunt primarily with their feet.
Well, they hold with their feet as they rip the.
Yeah. They'll hold it down and lean down and rip up with that hooked beak into little pieces. But yeah, those talons, they're not taking it and putting it up to their mouth. They're leaning down and holding with their talons. Does that make sense? That's a great question.
I have a parrot and he'll hold his peanuts and things.
Yeah.
Almost like
Mhm.
that raptors don't do that.
No, they're going to lean down and rip like that. If they're in a rush, they might just swallow that mouse whole and keep on going. But most of the time, they're going to savor it a little bit and rip it up. And then they do this really cool behavior called feeking, which is like wiping their face afterwards. So it's like a little napkin, and they'll go use whatever surface as their napkin and just wipe their little face, and it's very cute. So yeah.
So the new hatchlings, they're eating meat immediately.
Yeah, they are. They're depending on the species, one of the parents or both of the parents are bringing in that food for them. And also depending on the species, soon they'll be hunting on their own, or they're really relying on the parents. Like eagles, it takes a long time for them to fully develop to be able to fledge and fly off. But smaller species like our kestrels, they've got a pretty quick turnaround as juveniles until they're fledging. Makes sense. Yeah, I love watching the cam, like the Cornell cams is really, really interesting. Yeah, they're very cool.
So someone in the chat mentioned that Cornell has plans for a barn owl nesting box.
Wow, that's fantastic. I had no idea. That's amazing. Yeah, very
Maybe
cool.
they're really big.
Yeah, it's you just put a barn in the tree. It's a nesting box, don't worry. Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. This has been super fun. Yeah.
Maggie, I have one more quick question, if you don't mind. So
They had one more question. I'm sorry.
I had just one more quick question.
Yes.
So where do you think where do you think there are the most like gaps in birds of prey conservation research? In other words, I guess like what do you think desperately needs to be studied?
That's a really good question. So
What's the question?
the question was, where do we think the most gaps in birds of prey research are? Like what needs to be studied the most? And coming from New Mexico, I will say the prairie falcons. There is basically no data on prairie falcons. They're not native to North Carolina. But we really don't know if they're a species of concern because nobody has been researching them. And their range is from California, New Mexico, Texas into Mexico. And so the nesting in Mexico, there's zero data on. We don't know if they're in decline. We don't even know what the baseline was. So prairie falcons definitely need some more research. My old job was doing a prairie falcon working group though, so that's great news. They're in the process of trying to get some data on them. But yeah, that's a great question. That's the only one I can think of. I don't know any in North Carolina. I'm sorry.
Thank you,
But
Maggie.
yeah, thank you. I'm gonna hand this over to you.
Well, thank you, everybody online that is with us and in person. We're going to sign off online right now. And hope you will join us with our program in January on beavers. So thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Luke. Bye-bye.